If we can start with you, Kelly, because it was a team of 3 that started Neuropartners.
It was, yeah.
What was the catalyst to taking on somebody else to bring into that team?
Because there was 3 of us, we were quite lucky in the sense that we all kind of took the plunge together and we had that support from each other really about starting up. But for us it was about, we already had links within the North East. We're an organisation that provides support and rehabilitation to people who've had a neurological condition or a brain injury. And we had a lot of links in the North East. And what it meant was quite quickly after we had set up the organisation, we started to have referrals coming through to the company. And what that meant was we had the work there, but we didn't necessarily have the staff to cope with that. So quite quickly, the 3 of us had to be quite involved, and we were quite hands-on as well in the early stages of the organisation. And there was quite a poignant moment where our accountant had said to us, you know, in the 1 hour that you're going out and you're providing this support session to this person that you don't want to let down and you want to ensure you provide a good quality service to, as a director of the company, you could actually be out there and doing a presentation to some commissioners who could end up referring 3, 4, 5 or 6 cases to you instead. So in the very early stages, we realised quite quickly that we needed to employ, you know, a good standard of quality staff that we could rely upon, that we could trust, and that, you know, would deliver a good quality service for us, so that as directors we could look at growing the organisation and ensuring that we were able to meet the needs within the region.
Great. So that's quite, I mean, there's a number of things I'd like to come back to there, because it clearly changed the way you were going to operate, and again introduced a number of things in terms of delivering the service. But if we can move on, Joanna, when you were looking to take on your first employee, was it a reaction to something, or was it a plan? Was it something that you'd always thought at some, you know, after 6 months, I will take on, you've already written it down that you will take on this person?
I always wanted to take somebody on full time, and I had about 5 or 6 freelancers on the books that would work for me, from anything like a couple of weeks a season, so every 6 months, through to working for me maybe 2 or 3 days a week. So I had that kind of support network there of individuals, but I had nobody full time to rely upon really, and that was my motivation. Was to have somebody there that, I mean, I work a 4-day week because I've got a little boy, so on a Tuesday, if I'm off, for example, it's really important for me to be able to switch my brain off and spend that time with my son. That was my motivation, and I wasn't doing that. I was actually worrying, going into work, trying to kind of field calls all of the time, and I think that was really my motivation, was that I'd kind of had a temporary plan in place that was working to some extent, but I actually needed something that was much more concrete. And I was looking for somebody, the kind of dream employee that I could, you know, walk away from the business and leave them to run it. Even just for that day a week, it made a massive difference to me to be able to switch off and move away from it. So that was my motivation, and I wanted that person long before I could afford them. I think it was really important to me to have that person in the business, but I was never very sure that it was going to be financially viable. And it came to the point where I had to make a decision between, well, do I take less of a salary for myself and put that towards getting somebody full time, because then it allows me to have the freedom, the peace of mind. It was about other values other than kind of the monetary aspect. So that was what I decided to do. It was a very important decision to make. And I had a lot of sleepless nights making that decision, but now that I've made it, I'm completely relaxed about it.
And from a practical perspective, you know, you talked about that you would have to reduce the amount you took out of the business. Did it work out that way, or did it balance out in terms of the full-time employee versus the freelancers that you were
The
employing?
benefits of having that full-time person in the business, it's because, I mean, we'll probably come on to it later, but it's changed my role within the business so that I'm able to go out and pitch for more business and do business development. So it's actually changed my role, which has brought in more money to the business, which means that we haven't had this kind of steal from Peter to feed Paul attitude. It hasn't worked out like that at all. And I think that that's what the initial fear is, that you're only really seeing in a very short-term way what the effects of employing that person are going to be. And you can't tell what the effects of employing that person will be until they come on board. The person that I've employed has been able to take on board a greater responsibility and a greater workload than I'd anticipated, so it's kind of freed me up to do other things, which in turn has brought more business into the company, really.
So was it a difficult decision, or did it eventually kind of just become something that you felt you had to do?
I think it was one of those things with all business decisions. They start out as a risk, and you see the risk in them. And I think the further I got along the path to employing somebody, I could see that the risk was kind of balancing out a little bit, and I knew that it was less. It was more of a risk to not take that person on and to have these freelance people that came in and out of the business and would occasionally do something that I asked them to do but walks away at the end of the day, and I might not see them again for 2 or 3 weeks. So that is a much bigger risk to me than trying to worry about having somebody full-time on the books.
And Emily, for you, was it about fulfilling demand and fulfilling orders, or was it about developing the business?
It was a mixture of both, really. Obviously, because we manufacture, I always knew that hopefully there would be the demand and we would have to take on staff to fulfil that. But also, what I didn't anticipate was how much more and more time the admin side of things, the speaking to customers and all that would take me away from actually making the product myself, and how I'd have to fill that gap with sort of other people as well. And it was very scary kind of taking on your first one, because up to that point I'd been kind of a one-man band, and kind of the success of the business only ever affected me and my sort of financial state, my own well-being. And as soon as I took on somebody else, the business had to do well because they were relying on it as well. So that kind of responsibility was a big step, and something that I did worry about before that, because obviously taking someone on, I wanted the business to work for them as well. But I think once you've taken on the first person and it's gone smoothly, it kind of reinforces it, and you kind of think, okay, I feel a bit more prepared now to take on someone else. And I think with each additional person you have, you sort of get a more system in place, and you sort of realise what you're actually looking for. I think that was the thing when I took on the first person. Although I knew I needed someone to help with manufacture and everything, I didn't actually really know what I was looking for until I actually had someone working with me, and then it kind of helped me work out what it was I needed help with.
Yeah.